Bipolar disorder is a mental disorder which can lead to very severe and outside of the normal mood swings. The mood swings are often comprised of manic and depressive episodes. These manic episodes are where the individual is filled with a higher than normal amount of energy and mood increase, but can often also lead to irrational thoughts and potentially even episodes of psychosis. Then those manic episodes are followed by a series of depression, in which the individual is unmotivated, lethargic, very sad, and in general just in more of a depressed state. The manic and depressive states are essentially two extremes on the end of a spectrum. Individuals with bipolar disorder will often alternate between these two states. However, the specific circumstances and the duration of these states for each person can be very different, ranging from potentially just a few days to even months on end. There's no definitive answer on what causes bipolar disorder. However, factors which may increase the risk of developing the disorder are known, and include having relatives or other family members which have the disease as well as periods of high stress like the death of a family member or another traumatic event. Bipolar disorder is a chronic condition, meaning for most people it is something that they're going to be facing throughout their whole life, as unfortunately there is not a permanent cure. There are treatments which can be used to mediate some of the symptoms, including medications, with the most common one being lithium. However, other programs which don't use medication but rather counseling and intervention by medical professionals can also help improve some of the symptoms or difficulties related with the condition. Before discussing bipolar disorder, it is important to understand what dopamine is. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter responsible for many key functions inside the body, including physical movements, as well as the mental state and emotional response. There are quite a few conditions actually which can be caused by dopamine imbalances, and for normal function of the body, it is very important to have stable and consistent levels. Dopamine in itself is just a neurotransmitter. For it to function effectively, it also needs the receiver, which in dopamine's case are the dopamine receptors 1 through 5. Each do have different functions, however for the most part, D1 and D2 receptors are the most commonly found and used in our body. There are post and presynaptic neurons, with the presynaptic neurons releasing the neurotransmitter and the postsynaptic ones with the receivers on the other end. On screen is my dopamine neuron model. The important regions are the vesicles which hold the dopamine, the free dopamine, the dopamine G-coupled receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, and the dopamine transporter gates on the surface of the cells. As mentioned previously, the exact causes of bipolar depression are unknown. However, scientists have a pretty good understanding of the general causes and biological action behind the disease. Scientists have been able to figure out that dysfunction in the dopaminergic systems of our brains is behind bipolar disorder to a large extent, with the manic episodes correlated with increased levels of dopamine and the depressive states correlated with lower levels. For healthy, normal functioning neuron cells, the typical cell signaling pathway for dopamine is as follows. Phospholipase C hydrolyzes phosphatidylinositol biphosphate, creating dicoglycerol and inositol triphosphate. Inositol triphosphate, which binds with the prosilin receptor and introduces positive Ca, which then binds to the prostacylin receptor and induces positive calcium ions to be released from the intercellular storage within the endoplasmic reticulum. Diactylglycerol attracts the protein kinase C to the membrane, causing a number of effects such as NF-kappa B activation and actin reorganization. Phospholase C can be activated by both GQ and G proteins, and all four members of the GQ11 family have been shown to activate phospholipase isoforms. Furthermore, G subunits can activate phospholipase, and the structures of the individual G subunit influences phospholipase potency. Both GQ and G proteins play a role in the phospholipase activation. They can either be working together or individually, and the discovery that phospholipase has distinct sites for GQ and G activation actually has significant implications for the functional selectivity of the dopamine pathway. To reverse this change, D2 type receptors block this signal by inhibiting adenyl cyclase. So while the dopaminergic system in our brain is relatively well understood, as mentioned previously, the exact mechanism causing bipolar disorder is still not completely known and figured out by scientists. With that being said, through my research, I was able to find sources and studies which attempted to answer the question of why bipolar was caused and where in the dopamine signaling pathway the error occurs. One of the sources I uncovered during my research was the dopamine hypothesis of bipolar affective disorder, the state of the art and implications for treatment. This source created a credible argument for the fact that bipolar affect is likely caused on the receiving end of the synapse, meaning in the postsynaptic neuron rather than in the presynaptic neuron that sends out the dopamine. My dopamine signaling flowchart which I created shows where this error occurs, highlighted in blue now. As you can see, because the altered GPLS signal is modified from the default norm, the rest of the dopamine signaling pathway has the potential to be working incorrectly. While this isn't the only change or factor that can lead to bipolar depression, it does signify how the imbalance of dopamine in a person's brain can lead to drastic changes and even to central nervous system disorders like bipolar. It really goes to show how important and how amazing our genetic information is in our cells, and yet how delicate it is at the same time. Thank you for watching.